I'm John Heilemann, and this is the Hell and High Water Podcast.
My guest is Atlantic staff writer and award-winning author George Packer.
Decades from now, Americans will visit the memorials to those who were lost on 9/11, and they will know that nothing can break the will of a truly united states of America. They will remember that we've overcome slavery and civil war, we've overcome breadlines and fascism and recession and riots and communism and, yes, terrorism. They will be reminded that we are not perfect, but our democracy is durable. And that democracy, reflecting as it does the imperfections of man, also give us the opportunity to perfect our union. That is what we honor on days of national commemoration. Those aspects of the American experience that are enduring, and the determination to move forward as one people. More than monuments, that will be the legacy of 9/11.
So that's Barack Obama saying something that I think many people have ascribed to over the course of these last 20 years, George, which is that 9/11, was a terrible day in American history, but that the ultimate testament to America and the strength of our system is that we endure. It's a flawed system, but we're working to perfect it. We're at a very, very fraught moment in American history. What's your sense at this moment of whether Biden is the right leader to help us get through it and onto the other side, where those words that Obama was saying just now, or was saying 10 years ago, are still ring true as opposed to ring hollow, as I fear they and other words like them will ring very much on this 9/11 anniversary?
Yeah, I don't think that any leader can say what Obama said 10 years ago and expect to have a rapturous response from the public, because it's not where the public is. I'm not sure it was where the public was in 2011, but Obama was often speaking aspirationally rather than descriptively, and hoping that by the power of his words, he would bring us up to the vision that he had of us. Right. And he was never quite able to do it. A few months ago, I looked at Biden's, and even during the campaign, his speeches were so simple and somehow reassuring. We can do this. We're Americans. He didn't argue. He didn't have to persuade. He didn't draw up a theory of the case, as you said. It was just something about his character. I don't know about his cognitive abilities, but I do know that his rhetorical abilities are very limited, and you need to be able to bring people with you. And his handling of the last days of Afghanistan, to me, was so bad that it showed a kind of dangerous void of leadership. So I'm less certain of Biden as the answer than I was when I wrote Last Best Hope. But he's what we've got. We have to really, really want him to succeed.
20 years on, the global war on terror, was extraordinarily expensive in many ways, not just in terms of money, but in terms of priorities that got reshuffled and things that got deprioritized that were quite important, freedoms that were lost, other things. You can make the ledger. The costs of that global war on terror were astronomical. Is it your judgment as we sit here now that in some ways the global war on terror was in fact a war that was won, or can one even render that judgment at this point and do some of the things that have happened on the ground in Afghanistan in this last month concern you about the possibility that, to the extent that we had some success in the last 20 years on that front, that they may prove to be, if not illusory, temporary, evanescent, that we might be, we should keep our eye on the ball here about what might be coming down the road?
Well, when Chou En-lai was asked how he assessed the French Revolution, he said it's too soon to say.
Yeah.
And I think it's too soon to say. It's very hard to assess this because, first of all, it's just so big and amorphous and complex. It has so many different aspects to it, both domestic policy, homeland security, our daily lives, airports, police departments, surveillance, priorities, as you say, that were lost, including the big one, global warming. And then abroad, the wars, the lost lives, the failed effort to create stable, friendly governments in Iraq and Afghanistan. In that sense, when you look at it that way, the war on terror was a failure. It was a big, costly failure because eventually it became an effort to remake the Islamic world, and we could not do that. We did not know how. We did not have the competence or the will or the ability. It was a success in the sense that for 20 years we have not had anything close to another 9/11. And if you told me that there wouldn't be one on 9/12, I wouldn't have believed you because we all assumed it was just a matter of time. For an Afghan 25-year-old woman, there were 20 years in which we created the possibility for her to have a better life. And those 20 years were very important for that generation in Afghanistan and really in Iraq too, a little less dramatically. And now we've abandoned that. And so in a sense, we have left a failure where we had the beginning of a success. Maybe not a durable success, but you can't look those people in the face and tell them that that doesn't matter to us. It's very hard for me to think about how much we've abandoned in Afghanistan. We have remained safe here at home at great cost abroad. And all of that is just too damn hard for me to add up and give you a single figure.
I know you were there in 9/11. So, and again, you'll see why this is one of these topics that it can lead to various trouble for people. But I was more troubled by, and am still at this moment more troubled by, the events of January 6th than I am by the events of September 11th. And I mean it in this respect. I don't mean it in the sense that obviously there was more of a greater loss of life on September 11th than on January 6th. But the notion that of an insurrection from within, that the profound, all of the things that in both in fact and in theory, all the things that January 6th were about, that posed a greater threat to America because it was internal, because it was anti-democratic, because it led to this existential crisis that we're now talking about. That to me threatens America's way of life, our form of government, democratic legitimacy, and therefore is much more troubling to me than the notion that there's a foreign enemy out there trying to kill us.
I had never quite thought about it in that way, but now that I hear you, I agree with you. It's like the difference between a knife attack that leaves a deep wound but doesn't kill you, and cancer, which is going to be with you for the rest of your life and which may well kill you, and which will keep coming back. So it's inside us. We have no unifying enemy that we had after Pearl Harbor and for maybe a few months or a couple of years after 9/11. The very act of January 6th divides us. Some people want to find out what the hell happened and make sure it never happens again, and other people want to bury it alive. And it represents a level of disbelief in ourselves and in our democratic values that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. 9/11 was a shock, but we knew about terrorism. And in some ways, we should have known better. We should have expected it. They'd been trying to get our attention for about a decade. But to see Americans try to invade the Capitol and hang elected officials and overthrow the Constitution and the popular will, the only analogies I've got are 1861. And I honestly thought that 1861 was one of a kind, and Fort Sumter was history. And here we are, facing potentially worse the next time we have a disputed election, which will be the next election. And the next time we have laws and officials in place who are not going to uphold the vote, but who are going to overturn it. We seem headed for that right now. And it's so much harder to figure out what to do when you are your own enemy and you're falling apart and breaking into pieces without really anything fundamental being wrong.
Thank you for taking the time, George. George Packer, ladies and gentlemen, here on Hell and High Water.
Take care.